So thank you for joining us this evening then for our Moving to Postgraduate SQE and LLM study. We're recording this session and I'll be sending over a copy of the slides and the recordings tomorrow. But please do utilise the chat function that's available to ask any questions. We'll be pausing partway through the session and we'll make sure we have plenty of time for lots of Q&A at the end as well. Closed captions have been enabled as well so that you can access those. So my name is Nicola Gorge. I am the Student Recruitment Manager here at the College of Legal Practice. I oversee the journey of our prospective students from their sort of initial interest in studying with us through to enrolling onto the programme directly with the College of Legal Practice. I'm aware that many of you actually will also be joining us and studying with one of our partner universities as well. So I may not have spoken to you before, but I can certainly still try and assist you with any SQE questions, which I'm sure will be helping you further on this evening as well. And I'm joined tonight by our CEO, Dr. Giles Proctor as well. Giles, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Nick. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Yes, I'm Giles. I'm the head of the law school, but I suppose my background is as a practitioner who moved into sort of legal education, working in law schools, running LLMs and other courses, etc., and designing those LLMs both for universities, but also for law firms as well. So over the years, hopefully, I gained some experience in understanding that move that you're making from undergraduate study to postgraduate study. I suppose one further fact about me is I was head of Kaplan Law School when Kaplan won the contract to start designing what is now the SQE. So hopefully I can bring a little bit of insight into the SQE part of the master's study as well, and how it sort of fits in, how it works for you, and give you a general sense of how that will impact on your master's study.
Brilliant. Thanks, Giles. So just a brief overview then of what we will be covering this evening. So I'll be giving a bit of an explanation about who we are here at the College of Legal Practice. We will obviously be focusing on what is an LLM and particularly some jargon busting as well. Looking at the differences when studying a master's qualification compared to an undergraduate. And then also giving some examples of activities as part of master's modules at the college. Giles will be sharing as well some top tips from students and from staff as well, top tips and advice for studying the masters. We'll provide some information around financing and studying for the masters as well. And then, as I mentioned, lots of opportunities hopefully to answer any questions that you might have. So introducing the College of Legal Practice to you then. So for those of you who don't know, we are a fully online postgraduate law school, and we are very much built for delivering online. We've never delivered our own courses on face-to-face facilities. They have literally been developed and designed to be delivered online as opposed to being converted in that way. Our parent company, the College of Law, are leaders in legal education in Australia, so we are very experienced in delivering digital learning. We're all about accessible and affordable legal education as well, so that's a key focus of ours. Traditionally, law is obviously known for being a barrier, an area with many barriers to entry, so we try and keep our own costs down by allowing further access there. We also facilitate access through our personal and targeted individual support, where students get access to high levels of one-to-one tutor supervision as part of our SQE provision as well. And we ensure we facilitate an inclusive learning environment through our learning and teaching, making reasonable adjustments as appropriate. You'll see there's a number of logos on the screen there from organisations that we partner with. So some of them are university partners, and I know some of you, as mentioned, will be joining the call this evening because you're planning to study with one of our university partners. So thank you for joining us this evening. And we also have some law firms on there, or departments, organisations with law departments that we partner with as well. So moving on then, I'm going to hand over to Giles.
Nicola, thank you very much indeed. So just to introduce this evening's discussion, it's really focusing on helping you understand all about the switch to a master's study, and particularly a sort of different type of master's from what you might imagine to be a classic academic master's, because we're looking at a master's as a professional practice organisation through the lens of professional legal practice, rather than looking at law purely as an academic discipline. Many of you on the call today are going to be studying with universities who run a master's with the college. So hopefully this session will give you a flavour of what to expect when you're doing your master's with our partner university. Others on the call, however, attending are not with a university partner of ours, so we'll also give you some information on our own masters, our approach to our own LLM, which we offer to all our students. Ultimately, the masters that we and our partner universities offer are aiming to prepare you for practice, but also to help you qualify by the solicitor's qualification examination. So I suppose understanding what to expect, how you'll be asked to study. Also, at the end of this session, we'll give you a little bit of insight into the top tips from previous students on LLM and tutors who teach on LLM about what they think is important to focus on. Hopefully, all this will give you some help in understanding what you may decide to do in terms of progressing on to a master's. Now, so what I'll do first of all, if I may, just moving on to the next slide, is just set the scene and really ask the basic question, I suppose, of what is a master's. And apologies if you are across this, but I often find when I'm talking to students that there's jargon involved here, that it helps to be able just to understand at the basic level to set the context for your study. So firstly, understanding what you're going to be studying is connected to the level of your master's qualification. So UK institutions, the universities, work within a framework, and they set levels for the various studies, a level of studies. So in your degree, it's levels 4, 5, and 6, but on a master's, they're effectively called level 7 courses. And what a level does is it describes what demands on you are going to be when studying at that level, and also what outcomes you can achieve on that program of study. And I'll set out that a little bit for you more in a moment. Now, masters are therefore referred to as level 7 awards. So the sort of skills and outcomes with the master's study, very much like your degree, you gather credits from the modules you successfully complete. Now, if you've done an undergraduate degree and you noticed your credits as you went through your 3 years, you'll be very familiar with this idea. Well, on an undergraduate degree, you do 360 credits. On a master's, you're aiming to get 180 credits by passing successfully those number of modules that you take. And I suppose it's helpful to understand that on a master's course, you will do a number of modules alongside, for example, SQE1, SQE2 preparation. You'll also do an extended piece of work, and that's usually worth about 40 to 60 credits, and it's called invariably a dissertation, an extended project, or as we call them in our particular LLM, a capstone project. And that's a longer piece of work you produce under some guidance and involves reflection on a particular area of law or a particular item of law that's particularly interesting for you. So with that jargon in mind for shaping this level 7 course, you're going to get credits for passing your modules. What else do we have to think about? Well, I think we have to think about the fact there are certain expectations on you when you're doing a master's. And those expectations are really set by this framework. And the framework tells you what sort of insights you're meant to have and what sort of approach to scholarship you've got to have. So what will tutors be thinking about when they're teaching on the masters? What are they looking for from you? And I've put those on this slide towards the bottom. And really what a master's is seeking to do is look for your systematic understanding of the area of knowledge that you're going to take on, understanding of current problems and new insights, and informed by, in our case, on a law master's, professional practice. So the first thing about an LLM in professional practice is you're really looking to get close to practice, current practice ideas, etc., in particular areas of law, but also in the approach to skills that you're going to be using. Secondly, a master's will look closely at the various types of scholarship techniques which you've bumped into in your undergraduate degree, but are really focused on in a professional master's. So, for example, that writing, that drafting, application to the law, synthesis of ideas. And in a master's, you're also looking to see, well, can I look with originality at a particular subject or area? So a practical understanding of lines of inquiry into a particular area of law. So really a master's invites you to read round the topic, and there's a great emphasis on self-study and your own independent learning, which you may have had to a certain element on your last year of your degree, but really ramps up when you come onto a master's. And finally, those critical evaluation skills. This idea of taking lines of discussion and argument and lines of procedure and practice and comparing and contrasting them. So those are some key features of a master's framework. And these ideas, these expectations, feed into the structure of the course and, of course, your experience, therefore, of what sort of teaching and learning you're going to have on a master's. So having sort of set the scene and giving you a context of the jargon and the approach to masters, let's just dive a little deeper, please, and look at, well, what is studying at master's level actually like? And on the next slide, I've set out a few key areas that we see when students are coming on the masters, both with our partner universities and with ourselves, that's different from undergraduate study. So first of all, this idea of timescales. An undergraduate degree can be 3 years full-time or even longer. A master's can be 1 year's study for full-time, that's the traditional model, or 2 years part-time. And if you're thinking about a professional master's, you've got to think about the implications for your work-life balance. In other words, ask the question of a particular master's course, how is it timetabled? Because that may differ very much from what you experience in undergraduate teaching. For example, a master's may be timetabled in blocks. It may be timetabled very intensively over certain days of the week. So first of all, understanding the timescales and the direction of travel through a master's via the timetable is very important. Secondly, on a master's course, classes tend to be smaller and much more participation is asked of you. There is, if I may use the phrase, less hand-holding. There is therefore a reliance on you being prepared when you come to a particular master's session, be it a seminar or a small group workshop or a one-to-one with a tutor. And that's where I suppose we see the greatest change is the expectation on preparation and the approach to study. So you'll be given in the masters, in any module you do, probably some guidance tasks, maybe some guided reading, but also you may be asked to do other things you haven't done a lot of before, like critically analysing different approaches to things, so legal problem and transaction. You may be looking at the interplay of law and practice. And some students I've talked to have compared master's study to a bit of an iceberg. The bit you see above the surface is the minimal preparation you're asked to do, but the more you dig in, the more you see below the surface about professional practice and ideas and how it influences your approach to a particular subject. And I'd also add in that where the SQE is involved in these professional practice masters, which it is, the SQE learning is a different style of learning from some of the modules on the masters. It's very active learning. It can be very intense. It's very task and question driven. I'll explain a little more about that in a moment, what I mean. I suppose two final points for about thinking about studying on a master's. First of all, the subject matter of a professional master's is much more likely to be focused around practical legal tasks that you are thinking about carrying out, or you're reflecting on what practitioners do in practice. You're also thinking about your tutors, who are more likely on a professionally focused master's to have current experience in practice or to be ex-practitioners as tutors. So they're going to have that ability to understand not just the academic basis of the master's module they're teaching or supervising for you, but also having seen it in practice and understanding it from the practice angle. Okay, just going to pause there very briefly. Nicola, any questions so far from anyone?
We've just had one question, which is asking about pass rates, so presumably in relation to SQE.
Right, so in terms of the masters, obviously, in terms of the masters, what people will do is they'll do the SQE on SQE2 as part of the masters, and you can choose or not to go on and do the SQE national exam, which is run by Kaplan, and then the SQE2 national exam. Now, in order to answer the pass rates, the SRA doesn't publish any pass rates yet. So the SRA has published no pass rates data. Some providers choose to publish some pass rates based on students they contact who have contacted them and let them know the results, because all providers rely on students providing their results. So a simple answer, there are no fixed pass rates. The SRA have said that they will start to produce pass rate data quite shortly, but when that's going to be, I'm not sure. In terms of, sorry, just seeing the question there, the percentage of pass rate, the national pass rate on SQE is about 53, 54% at the moment. And it's been fairly steady since November 2021. SQE2 is much higher. SQE2 is in the mid 70%. So it tends to be SQE1 is more of a barrier than SQE2 in terms of passing the national exam. But what I'm going to do a little bit later and talk is go into SQE2 a little, SQE1 for you a little bit to explain how you approach it.
There's
Nicola,
a
any
question
other
as well
questions?
about, do we have a master's to do with the SQE? And yes, that's exactly
We
right.
do. We have a master's to do with the SQE, but we also partner with certain universities who actually we're part of their master's course. And if you're at one of those partner universities, you will get a master's degree from that university. Okay.
That's all for now.
Thank you. Yes. Well, shall we move on to our next topic then? So we've talked about what's expected, what the difference on a master's is between an undergraduate and postgraduate study. I think it's really useful to give you some examples of the types of modules you'll see, particularly on a professional practice master's, either one that's studied with a partner university of ours or our own master's program. So I'm just going to show you some sample content of some of the modules I've referred to already. So first of all, let's just talk very briefly about the SQE and what you might expect to see in our modules, but also, I suspect, in other providers who provide SQE1, SQE2, fairly similar coverage. And I think when you're looking at SQE 1 and 2, they are very different from more traditional master's modules, because what are you doing with SQE1 and SQE2? Yes, you're getting a master's course, you're taking an internal exam to get your credits for that module towards your master's. But what you're also doing, if you wish, is preparing to take the national exam. You'll go to Kaplan, you'll book a spot to book into an exam centre to take your SQE1. And if you pass that, you will then go and do your SQE2, should you so wish. So the modules for studying SQE prep in a master's are very assessment focused, because they're focused on helping you get through, ultimately, if you wish, a national exam. They're also very practice focused, because if you're studying SQE1 and SQE2, you're looking at 13 areas of law as prescribed by the SRA. That's all the law you did on your undergraduate law degree, plus lots of practice and procedure from areas such as business law, property law, civil and criminal litigation. So it's intense. Both SQE1 study and SQE2 study are intense. But what we do provide on our master's modules is all the materials you need. So we are not going to ask you on these two modules to go and look at further information and do research. We will provide you with all the materials you need to not only take the module successfully, but also hopefully enter the national exam and be successful as well. So that's the sort of background to the SQE preparation modules on the LLM. We'll move on to the next slide. Just to give you an example of one of the tasks that you might see on an SQE1. And this is the sample SQE multiple choice question. And many of you may be familiar with these already and seen them already in some of the guides. On a master's, what we're asking you to do is very similar to a standalone SQE preparation course, which is this style of question is the style of question that's used by Kaplan to assess in the national SQE1 exam. So on the master's module, we get you used very quickly to answering and addressing this style of question. And what this scenario is what they call single best answer multiple choice question. And so the key thing on the SQE module is to be able to grasp that legal principle and be able to apply it. So in this case, actually, the legal principle, if you read through the MCQ, is all about separate legal personality and what companies can and can't do and what they're liable for. But I think really what I'm showing you is that this is a particular style of task that you'll see all the way through the SQE module, because the key focus is helping you to marshal the law and then be able to ultimately answer these questions, both to pass your LLM assessment, but also ultimately to go and pass the SQE1. So you'll practice these multiple choice questions all the way through. And what we do is we build the knowledge for you. We present you with videos, we present you with reading, we give you activities to do to understand the principles, give you flashcards to make sure you work up and understand the issues. And then you have lots and lots of practice, both in the modules you study and module for SQE1, but also in various progress tests we have running alongside that. So you can see it's quite important, I think, on this master's module, you get lots of feedback. We've arranged a one-to-one system on our SQE module, so you're constantly kept up to date with where you are. Feedback's really important to help you develop and grow on the SQE1 module. The learning technique in this particular LLM module is all about understanding and applying legal principle, having that critical analysis ability to focus on, well, what's the short fact pattern asking me to talk about, and which answer is the most correct answer, applying that legal principle and moving on quite quickly, because in the actual exam with Kaplan, the SQE1 exam, you're asked to answer 360 of these questions over 2 papers. So you've got to learn the technique as well of moving through multiple choice questions. So that's the sort of example of an LLM SQE module task that you'll see a lot of in the SQE1 preparation module. If we move on next, and there was a question about what's the difference between SQE1 and SQE2. SQE1 is all about the application of knowledge and the multiple choice question. SQE2 is looking to examine you on 6 skills, and those skills include those ones you've done on your degree, your law degree, of writing, drafting, research, presentation skills, advocacy, and also this one, which is one that the SRA put into the syllabus, which is actually all about understanding matter, a case of matter analysis. So actually, effectively, what you'd be doing with a client file. Now, this is an example of a standard memo you're being asked to produce, and this is helping build your understanding of property practice. And in fact, everything we do is focusing on what's on the syllabus for SQE, should you then want to go and take the SQE2 exam. So this is very good, very practical and practice-focused task. You're being asked to produce a written advice. This aligns to what Kaplan will examine on the SQE1 exam. And you can see you've got instructions, facts, the task to complete. And the learning technique here really is about giving client advice, but also supporting that with analysis and supporting that with a clear expression of how you give that advice and how you make sure you meet all the client's various instructions. Now, what we find in the SQE2 LLM module is that it's practice and feedback which really helps students. In other words, when you're doing a skill, we don't expect you to master the skill first time, all of it. What we do is we build the skill with you. And in these practice and feedback sessions, you get a chance to have a tutor running through your memo with you and saying, okay, this is really good. You've managed to advise the client really well in this matter, but there are some things perhaps you need to pick up on. And as part of that, I'll show you on the next slide, we give you lots of exemplars. So if you're thinking about property law and practice and you're thinking about the feedback that you're getting, you can see we've given you on the left-hand side, and this is the document that runs for a few pages, we've given you an exemplar of what an answer that memo might look like. On the right-hand side, we've given you, well, this is what Kaplan say they're going to assess on. So we like to make sure, again, it's a very practical application to the syllabus that Kaplan set you in the national exam. And so your instructions and your facts and tasks to complete are all leading you to learn from what and how you would do this memo, were you asked in the exam to do the same thing. So lots and lots of practice and feedback. Again, for a master's module, employing that sort of criticality of analysis, communication, but also clarity of expression and making sure you can actually advise a client in a way that they understand. Okay, so that's a very practical approach to a master's module, SQE2. It's all about the skills, the 6 skills that you've got to master. But there are other modules, of course, on the master's, whether or not you're studying with a partner university of ours or whether you're studying our own master's. And just moving on to the next slide, here's a final example for you. And we talk about transactional skills task. Now, you might see these tasks either in our own modules or in other modules that you choose as part of your masters with a partner university. So, for example, these transactional modules will be helping to develop practice knowledge and skills in a particular area. So that practice knowledge can be in areas such as commercial law, intellectual property, employment law, dispute resolution, or there might be a focus in some of the modules on things like negotiation and legal skills or understanding the legal professional environment, really depending on which sort of masters you sign up for with one of our partner universities, or whether you come on to our masters where we focus very much on the practical stuff you'll need as you're developing a particular skill in a particular area. And here's an example really that we've put in our masters, which is similar to modules that you'll see in a partner university's LLM as well. It's really, this one's about evaluating a claim or defense. Again, you've got a memo and you're preparing a letter to the client, setting out the terms of the offer and making clear what the law is on a particular area, in this case, contributory negligence. So I suppose in common with our university partners, what we do with this sort of module is make sure it's designed by practitioners. It is usually delivered by practitioners or people who practiced in the area. So you've already got a higher level of criticality and understanding that comes from a tutor who's practiced. And these modules will cover an array of tasks that a practitioner will cover as part of a paralegal role or maybe a trainee role. So in this case, understanding a claim and then moving through the whole court process. It's very active learning. It'll involve you in writing, drafting, research, client advice and management, also commercial matters, managing a client in terms maybe of fees and understanding if there's a client complaint. And again, a feature of these master's modules will be, you probably have much smaller classes and you'll be talking through with your supervisor practical points on the procedure or the law. You'll be getting feedback on the tasks to help you reflect on how you can improve. Reflection is a professional skill we try and inculcate on our masters. I know our partner universities do on their masters as well. So those type of modules, the SQE1, the SQE2, but also these transactional masters and subject-based masters modules, really important to understand. You're going to have a mix on your degree, your master's degree, wherever you take it. Now, so I've talked about the sort of content that might go into a master's. What we're very quickly going to show you, and Nicola's very kindly going to walk you through it, is just the structure of our own masters, just to give you a sense of how this all knits together. Nicola, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Giles. And as Giles mentioned earlier, most sort of traditional master's programs will be full-time studying, you know, particularly those attending in-person masters delivered at universities. We do actually offer both full-time and part-time master's programs ourselves. So we'll just give you an overview of what that looks like in terms of the structure of the modules and how they're delivered. Most of you, when you've studied your undergraduate degree, you probably studied a number of modules at the same time, you know, and so had to sort of get your head around a number of different things at the same time. With our LLM, what you do is actually you're focusing on one module at a time, because they are, you know, they are still very vast, particularly the SQE modules, but that's how it is structured. So for example, you'll see here for the full-time program, the very first module is the SQE1 preparation course, which is actually the same as the first module for the part-time route as well. But on the full-time one, it's the 13-week one. So that's 13 weeks focusing on preparing for how to sit the SQE1 exams. That obviously Giles gave you an example of the sort of MCQs that you have as part of that exam earlier on. So you'd have 13 weeks focused on that, then a 2 weeks revision gap, and then that leads to the SQE1 assessment period. Following on from that, you would then move on to the next module. So that would be a transactional module of 9 weeks long with a gap, and then one of the other transactional modules as well. Again, followed by a gap, and then you would then go on to the SQE2 preparation course, which is 10 weeks long. Again, you then have a revision time built in, and then the SQE2 exam period then as well. And you'll see that last section there is the capstone project. So that sort of does you would start that earlier on, and that would thread through the program, but you would then have that additional time at the end to focus on that. And then similarly again with the part-time one, but you'll just see just a slightly different order. With that one, it's the SQE1 prep, and then one transactional module, then the SQE2, and then another transactional, but obviously finishing off still with a capstone legal research project. So all of our SQE preparation modules are timed to lead up to a particular SQE 1 and 2 exam period, which is set by the SRA. SQE 1 is only ever available to sit the exam in January and July. SQE 2 is actually available 4 times a year, so there's a bit more flexibility there. As in order to sort of pass the LLM, what you would need to pass is our internal modules. So you would have progress tests as part of the SQE1, for example, module, and you would need to pass that and the assessments as part of those other modules to then pass the overall LLM. The actual SQE1 and SQE2 assessment does sit externally, really, because you have to take that through the SRA. So it could actually be a case sometimes where someone decides they're not quite ready to take the SQE1, for example, assessment straight away. So they might delay it and take it at a slightly later date. And I think there was a question in the chat that came through about if you haven't passed the SQE1, for example, would you continue? And yes, you would continue on the programme and work your way through the other modules. But obviously you wouldn't move on to take the SQE2 exam, for example, until you have taken and passed the SQE1. So I hope that makes a bit more sense of that. Anything else to add on that one, Giles? You're on mute, sorry, Giles.
I'll unmute myself so you can hear me. So in terms of, I think that's a key point. Lots of students ask this, which is, you do the masters of the course, you pass your modules and get your credits and do your masters. And you may have to reset a module if a module doesn't go very well. And that can include SQE1, SQE2, whichever module. But ultimately, you then make a decision. If I want to go and qualify, I need to go and do my national exams. Kaplan run those exams for the SRA, as Nicola says. And therefore, you need to think about, well, when am I ready to do the national exam? Do I want to do it while I'm doing my masters? Or we find quite a few masters candidates say, I'll do my masters and finish it. I'll work in practice. And then what I might do is choose at a later date to go and do my SQE1 national exam, because our materials for the SQE1 course and SQE2 course are available for 10 months after you finish that particular module. So you can delay in going off to take the national exam. But the key thing to focus on really is going to be doing your masters, enjoying your masters, enjoying the modules and getting through them, and then making that decision when you want to go into the national exam. So, Nicola, I think there are a couple of questions in the chat, if there's anything you can address before we move on.
Yeah, there's some quite broad questions that have come through. For example, people from different backgrounds haven't yet studied law. Should they go straight onto this?
Yeah. Well, in terms of if you've not studied law, and some general guidelines for you, but it's well worth, if there's any specific guidelines on areas, we can give you individual advice tailored on your circumstances, as Nicola will explain later, the various ways of arranging to contact us. And if you're at a partner university, it's well worth contacting the partner university themselves, the person who's running the masters there. They'll be in close touch with us, but they may be able to answer your questions as well. So if you've not done a common law degree, or you've just done a small amount of law in your degree, it's worth thinking about before you do the SQE, do a conversion course in law, doing what they call a GDL, a graduate diploma in law. And we run that course, as do many other universities and providers. The reason is the SQE assumes an understanding of concepts and knowledge of legal practice and principle, and therefore, if you haven't got that legal knowledge and principle under your belt from, say, a law degree or a conversion course, it's quite hard. It's going to be very hard to pass the examination and keep up with the pace of study. Anything else, Nicola, we can help with?
I think the others will probably come to at the end as sort of quite a broad area, so we'll make sure we.
Of course, we can sweep those up. Okay.
Lovely. Okay, let's move on then to the next area, Giles.
Thank you. So I'm going to just finish up with talking about, well, what have we learned from students, but also from tutors on the masters about, well, what are your tips for success, and what have you got to expect, and what might surprise you, which you have to be ready for. And I think the top one always comes through from talking to students, both from partner universities, but also from students who are doing our SQE1 course on its own, is the intensity of the SQE1 course itself. And also, it seems like there's a lot of work to cover straight away. And the reason is because the syllabus for SQE1 is quite wide, as I said, 13 practice areas. And you can be surprised by how week by week you're moving through different areas of the syllabus. Now, to reassure you, if you've done a law degree or a conversion course, GDL, you'll have covered 6 or 7 of those areas in great depth. So you are able quite quickly to pick up legal principle. You can't use cases in the SQE. They don't ask you about cases. They don't ask you about statute. They don't ask you to quote a statute number. What they want you to know is the principle. So once you get over that shock of the breadth of the syllabus, we find on the SQE module, students get into a real rhythm of being able to cope with and apply legal principle. So I suppose the point for top tip that students always tell me is always follow the model of the course from week 1. It's not a good idea to rest for a couple of weeks and then get up to speed. You need to study from day 1. Follow the pattern. We set, for example, I'm sure the providers do, a weekly pattern of study. We set out what reading you need to do. This is about building your confidence as well as your knowledge. And if you follow that pattern, we find students, and it's really like doing on a full-time course, a 9-to-5 job. That really helps you to settle into the course and gain confidence. So the second tip we always get is moving on to a master's, thinking about what we talked about, the differences between an undergraduate degree and a master's degree, the practicalities of your time management and self-study. You might have been really good at this on your degree, but there is less support for you in terms of your own time management. You're left to have a lot of time to work through and do your master's tasks on some of the modules. On other modules like SQE1 and SQE2, you'll see your calendar is full of a structured design. So different modules on the masters demand different things of you. But this idea of discipline and self-study, being able to set aside the time you need, is really important. And again, you'll probably feel under a little more pressure because the classes are smaller, and therefore you'll be asked to deliver your ideas and your analysis more often, and also deal with those practical tasks we've seen, both in the transactional modules on subject areas like IP or commercial, or in the SQE1 and SQE2 modules. The final point, and again, this is something that students reflect on, is it's a bit of a shock going to a master's assessment regime, because on an undergraduate degree over 3 years, you sort of get used to the type of assessments you're going to do, whether it's a coursework or it's an essay or it's a multiple choice question. On a master's, the assessments tend to be a little more both in depth, so different in terms of whether it's MCQs for SQE1, whether it's skills, practicing and giving and providing legal memos, tasks and documents in SQE2, whether on transactional masters, it's writing, drafting, researching, writing a client note. Very, very different types of assessment across the masters. So you've got to be aware of that and what demands are placed on you. Secondly, there is usually a higher pass mark for a master's module. You might be used on your undergraduate modules having a pass mark of 40%. On the master's module, it's standard 50%. But also remember, on the professional masters, you're also trying to make sure you do it as well as you can, because these are professional skills you're going to be using. And I think finally, you'll find a master's really stimulating because it develops your skills, but it's quite demanding. So those are the 3 things that students reflect back to us from having been through a master's course, whether it's with a partner university or with us. But there are also some tips from master's tutors I thought I'd share with you on the next slide. And these are reflections on what they see as how students adapt to successfully doing a master's. Because all of a sudden you're into a master's, if it's a full-time master's, it can take you 2 or 3 months, and all of a sudden you're almost halfway through. So what are things that tutors say to me? Well, Giles, we really want students to just think carefully about these particular topics. The first one is, what is your motivation for doing the master's? Try and make sure that you're very clear that you're doing a particular purpose. whether you're doing the masters to improve your knowledge in some subject areas of law, whether you see yourself as going into a legal career and what type of career that is. Because there are some students we've seen who've just done a master's because they really don't have a clear idea of what else they want to do. They think they might buy some time while they make decisions. That can be fine, but also sometimes it can mean you're in the middle of a quite intensive master's and thinking, I don't really want to be here. You might also be under pressure from family and friends to go and do the SQE because you've done a law degree and surely you want to practice. Well, you might not. So you're going to go think, is this particular style of masters for me? Because you want to perform to your best, and therefore you want to be as sure as you can be, this is the route you want to take. The second thing tutors point out is that it's a really active learning on a professional master's, and therefore enjoying doing and exercising those skills, enjoying that critical analysis, enjoying learning about the law and also having a perspective on it. Really important that that's something, because tutors say in one-to-ones and in seminars, that really sets you apart if you're really approaching the tasks with that sort of eagerness and that enjoyment of that sort of professional and practical approach to law. And I suppose the third thing is, and tutors say this, they see a growth in personal resilience over the year, because a master's is searching. It's level 7, as I said at the beginning, because it's asking to develop all these skills, some of which you will have, but some of which you won't. And therefore, it can be tough. So developing that personal resilience, you will find out a lot about yourself. And that's why we at the college, I know in our partner universities, do use the personal tutor system you have. Do use and talk to your supervisors, your tutors, because they're there to help you through a master's. And they're used to the sort of questions you'll be asking them about workload and time and priorities. It's really important. And staff are always keen to encourage that, what you should be doing. You should be reaching out and getting assistance. Nicola, that's all from me. I'll hand back to you.
Thank you, Giles. Okay, so we'll just wrap up a little bit of further information and then come over to your questions. So if you, for those of you on the call that are not studying with one of our university partners, as we previously sort of mentioned, we do obviously offer our own LLM in legal practice, which includes SQE. And it is in fact the lowest cost online LLM with SQE on the market. It's priced at £7,245. You will see we have an excellent Trustpilot score, which is highlighted up there, where you can read about the experiences of our students from those that have left reviews for us. I know there was a question that came through about who, if you study with us, who awards the degree. It is a university, a qualification from us. So the College of Legal Practice, we have the power to award that degree to you. Moving on as well, also just in terms of funding, for studying the LLM, you can access the postgraduate student loan if you're UK based. To give you an idea of that as well, through Student Finance England, it's around just over £12,000 that you can draw down for a postgraduate loan, and that is enough to cover our fees plus the SQE 1 and 2 exam fees as well. So obviously that's particularly attractive there. Now, there was another question that came through, spotted as well, about do you have to study for an LLM? Well, no, there's different options as well. So again, individually on our own offerings, we have the LLM with the SQE, a 1-year full-time or 2-year part-time programme. The 1-year full-time is next starting in just a few weeks' time, really, 22nd of September, and applications are still open for that at the moment. Our 2-year part-time one has already started now for this year. It started in August, just earlier on in the month, but the next one will actually be running from February. So if you're thinking, actually, I'd like to do an LLM, but the part-time would be better to fit around your own commitments, then that is available for you as well from February. However, if you think, actually, if it's just the SQE that I need and I don't need a master's, and I'm, you know, from what Giles has said, is that actually made you think, do I really want to study a master's? Could I just look at SQE? you can indeed do that. We do just offer the individual SQE1 and SQE2 courses. There's different speeds available of those for full-time and part-time. As I said, I'll be sending through the slides tomorrow to you anyway, so you'll have this information, and happy to chat to you then as well about that. And just also, if you did want to take a further look at our courses, that you can access our demos here as well. So that will give you a closer insight into the SQE1 or the LLM transactional modules as well, where you can access the demo. There's a video there you can watch that's pre-recorded, showing our sort of learning materials and things as well, just to give you a closer insight. But again, I will send you this information over so you can access it. So let's go to the questions. I know we've had lots that have come through, and I think there's people from quite a few different coming at it different stages of research and from different backgrounds and things as well. So we'll try and cover as many as we can. I don't know if you've spotted any as yet, Giles, that you want to pick up first of all. I know we've covered quite a few now.
Gosh, it's too easy not to unmute. So there is a graduation ceremony, and it takes place in December. And we've got, I think, Nicola at the moment, about 130, is it? I think, at our graduation ceremony, something like that. So we run a graduation ceremony for all our successful LLM graduates, so I can confirm that. In terms of, I saw a query about the awarding of degrees. I think the colleague has answered their own question. Yes, as Nicola said, we have the power to award master's degrees ourselves for those who study directly with us, so we do that. In terms, I've just seen a question go of how funding SQE exams. So in terms of doing a master's, there is the master's loan, £12,200, and the way that we price our masters, our own particular masters, is that means you can pay for our masters, but also you have enough money left over from the loan to also pay for the Kaplan exams, for about £1,900 per sitting for SQE1 and about £2,900 for SQE2. So I suppose that always reminds me that when you're doing your preparation in the masters, making sure that you then go on do national exam and pay the exam fee at the right time for you when you feel absolutely ready. Now, in terms of the LPC question, yes, if you've completed an LPC, then you can, by the transitional route, go on and just do SQE2. If you want to qualify by the SQE2 route, you could do that. And we get lots of students who do that and come to us to do the standalone SQE2, which Nicola highlighted. However, one issue is if you've done an LPC, we always say to students, think about how long ago you did it. Because while the LPC roughly covered the subject areas that are now covered by SQE, property and practice, property law and practice, business law and practice, crim, civ, wills and probate, you've got to be careful that your knowledge isn't a little bit out of date. So we have had some students who did an LPC 5-6 years ago who've actually decided to actually do the SQE1 anyway. Because remember, for SQE2, you don't just need to do the skills. The skills are underpinned by the knowledge that is learned in SQE1, those 13 practice areas. So you have to be good at the skill, yes, but you also can be examined in the context of different subject areas, wills and probate, property, as we've talked about property tasks before. So be, I suppose, careful to make sure that you think your LPC knowledge is still sufficiently up to date to jump straight into SQE2.
And Giles, just on that scenario as well then, someone could choose, for example, they might have the exemption from SQE1 because of an LPC, but study the full LLM, study the SQE1 module, take the internal assessment.
That's right, take the internal exam, and then
you know, but not need to take that SQE1.
That's right, and then you know you're up to speed when you take the national exam. It's a good point, Nicola, and that's some students do that.
Yeah, but the alternative would be the SQE2. But just as Giles said, just think about the sort of the best scenario for you there. Yeah. Lovely. Let's just zoom back through. There was a question about the delivery of the sessions and if they're recorded.
Yeah,
Giles.
They are. So what we do is that in terms of the sessions, to support your learning, and I'll take SQ1 as an example, but it's very similar to SQ2. Is that we obviously give you the reading you need, and we also give you a short video or videos or podcasts about particular areas of law when you start a unit with a subject. And then you will have, in every week, taking the full-time course, you'll have a seminar in each topic that you're covering that week, in each subject you're covering that week. That seminar is delivered, as we're talking to you now, by a subject matter expert, and that's recorded. So if for any reason either you can't attend that session, or you can attend, but lots of students want to watch over again for revision purposes, then that's recorded for you. Also, likewise, what we call information sessions. And that's held with the module leader most weeks as an information session. And the module leader will talk to you about more general matters around the course in terms of the progress tests that Nicola mentioned earlier. How are you doing in those progress assessments that are giving you an idea of how you're progressing in the course? When are the assessments? What are they? We'll talk about study techniques with you. All those things that cover around the SQE and what you need to sort of progress through SQE1 and then SQE2. The only sessions that aren't recorded are the ones that we ask you to do one-to-one with your tutor every week. And you'll either do them one-to-one, or you'll do them one tutor to 3 or 4 students. The reason we do that is those are your sessions to raise and talk through about your progress with your supervisor. Your supervisor will be able to see all the marks you have as you complete the activities week by week on the system, and be able to advise you how you are in terms of the SQE. In other words, how are you doing in the various subjects? Are you hitting the standards you want to hit to pass the module successfully? Okay, so it's a quick recap. Most sessions are recorded, apart from those one-to-one sessions. Nicola.
Thank you. So someone's querying just about the necessity to complete a GDL or conversion course, really, and if someone can go on.
Exactly. It's not necessary to complete the course, but we would suggest that you think very seriously about, if the conversion course hasn't gone well, are you ready to step up and do the SQE? So I think, and that's really where we would welcome students contacting us directly to have a conversation about where you are on your journey. But as a rule of thumb, if you've done most of a conversion course and you can feel more confident then about taking the SQE, but I'd really advise you to have a chat with us individually about actually where you are on that journey of yours.
Okay, so there's a question about can you study remotely? So as I mentioned, we are a fully online legal training provider, so all of our delivery is done remotely. That leads on as well to what does a typical sort of timetable look like. In terms of the full-time study, if we look at, for example, the SQE1 preparation, first of all, we would suggest study time of probably around 30 to 35 hours of study time per week for the full-time programme. In terms of the actual live sessions, they're probably around 3 one-hour sessions a week, Giles, I think, in memory from the full-time.
That's right, about 3 seminars a week of an hour each, and then you'll have your information session at the end of the week, which is usually about 30 minutes to an hour. But you'll also have your one-to-one session with your supervisor, which is usually about 15 minutes. And what we find is those give touch points for most days. And the calendar will spread the work out over the week for you. But the calendar's a guide. So if you're a morning person, you may choose to study in the mornings and do the self-study in the mornings. And we say that's fine. Some people prefer to study at the weekends. What the key thing is about the calendar is, for the weekly studies, by the end of that calendar week, you have completed at whatever time in the week all the tasks that are set for you within that calendar week.
Yeah, but in terms of the delivery of the live sessions, yes, they do all take place between Monday to Friday, 9 to 5.
That's right.
But obviously, due to the intensity of those full-time programs, you need to make sure that you do have enough hours to commit to those.
Yes.
Otherwise, there are part-time alternatives out there that we offer as well. So please do consider those.
And we do have students who sometimes start the part-time course and decide after a couple of weeks, gosh, this is too intense for us to be successful. And those students can transfer over to part-time or the extended part-time 40-week course.
So what's the difference between just SQE prep or LLM?
Nothing. You're doing exactly the same module. It's just within the LLM, you're doing that module. If you did the standalone version, you find exactly the same experience.
Yeah. So some people do, obviously, in order to qualify as a solicitor, it's the SQE1 and the SQE2 that you need to pass. But some people do choose to take the LLM as well, because obviously it's a higher level qualification. You're able to study those additional modules as well, which some people are really quite keen to focus on different areas of law there as well. And for funding purposes as well, a lot of people will decide to go down the route of doing an LLM so that they can access that postgraduate student loan as well. Okay, I think that is about all of the questions that have come through.
And those are great questions. Thank you very much, everybody, for asking those. And as I say, once you finish, as Nicola's going to send the slides through, and obviously the recording. But if there's anything that you want to ask further questions, Nicola, I think there are ways people can contact us, aren't there?
Yes, so just pop our contact details up on the screen here as well. So yes, you can see our email address, our contact number there as well, and a QR code to book a one-to-one if you're looking to study directly with us as well. But as Giles has said, I will be sending an email out with a copy of the recordings and the slides as well, and then you'll have my contact details to ask any further questions as well. We tried to cover quite a lot this evening, but as I said, people are coming from different backgrounds and different situations, so sometimes it's just easy to be able to have that one-to-one contact with someone so that we can assist you directly then as well.
Yeah, Nick, I'd really recommend that, because it's great to have a sort of starting point of this session, but you may have other queries. Please do get in touch and have a chat.
Just to mention as well, we do have a YouTube channel. If you look us up, I think it's just called Collegial Pract. But you know, you'll find a link to it on our website as well, and I'll add that a link to the email. But there's lots of recordings of previous webinars on there where we have focus on particular areas. So for example, we solely focus on the SQE1 exam or the SQE1 preparation course, or we've solely focused on the LLM as well. So that might be more beneficial for some people.
Yes.
Lovely.
Excellent.
Well,
Thank
you very much for joining us this evening. And I look forward to speaking to some of you again, hopefully after tomorrow.
Cheers, everybody. Have a good evening. Bye-bye now.
Thank you. Bye.